So, over quite a few reviews, I've complimented the overall comedy and just humor direction that Demon Slayer has been taking, and at multiple points I've said it's just as entertaining as Fullmetal Alchemist was to me. So I've been thinking about why this series is so entertaining that it can just shift from serious, mundane to just very shonen design comedy, and it works so well in Demon Slayer when it's only really worked in one other series this well for me. Looking back at like episode 2, when the comedy was first being brought up, there's nothing all that different about the overall direction and execution for the scene seen there as we see with something like episode 15 or any of the other hilariously directed episodes. The only thing I could really come to the conclusion of was the main difference between the early stages where it wasn't working for me and now the later stages where it is that the cast wasn't as fleshed out as it currently is. When you have characters like Tanjiro just interacting with demons who are kind of making jokes and cracking up some laughs after his family just got brutally murdered, there's nothing that's going to feel elegant about that. However, when you naturally build a cast of characters and give Tanjiro time to heal and decompress, and you bring up characters such as Ino or even Zensu, like, of course you're naturally going to have a lot more fun. And just the balance of humor with their personalities, it meshes so perfectly that it really does mirror something like Fullmetal Alchemist to me, which I think is the peak of having a very serious, having a very just emotionally gripping story, but allowing characters like Edward Elric to just go ridiculous in character models with the art design and just have a lot of good laughs overall, and that's exactly what we see with Demon Slayer, especially in this episode. Literally, the first 5 minutes of this week's episode is them literally chasing each other around, and it's hilarious. Like I mentioned, when we first got introduced to Zensu, I knew that his marriage proposal to this random girl on the side of the street would happen to Nezuko eventually in the future, and of course we get that. He now wants to play friends with Tanjiro. He now wants to marry or at least be with his demon sister, and just that chase sequence was hilarious because, man, they put their lives on the line. They really do put themselves in immediate danger, so if they're chilling in and in, I'm glad they're having a little bit of fun to decompress and maybe act out a little more their age, because this life wasn't originally for Tanjiro. Hell, this life was never meant for Zensu, so to have them just be very innocent and childlike, it's fun. And how in the middle of all that ridiculous comedy, you're getting some subtle but noticeable growth with Ino, because this is a character who, for all we know, really never had human companions, or just most of his connections probably was based on the wilderness and animals that surrounded him. Basically just assume that based on his mentality and how little he knows about human compassion and just emotions overall. You have this random old lady saying, hey, your clothes are going to take a little while to get all the stains out, but you can wear these, they're nice and soft. And you can tell how happy he is, but he's confused because he probably doesn't know what the feeling of happiness and just warmth from another person is. And you just notice that throughout this entire episode, asking just why she was, giving them blessings and things like that. She doesn't even know you. Why would she care about you? You're noticing subtle growth because for the first time probably in his entire life, if it's not the first time, it's been a very long time, he's having human companions and just random people that are helping him and guiding him down a better path. It's not like he's going to shift off his boorish mentality and stop headbutting or being so out there right away, but you're noticing these subtle growths immediately because you have characters not putting up with this shit, and the people who are putting up with this shit, they are subtly but really guiding him down the correct path and turning him into more of a person rather than a wild animal tagging along with Tanjiro as well as Zensu. That's what's great about this cast, is even when you're having ridiculous shenanigans occur where you're just like, this art is absolutely hilarious just as a still image, but backed by the dialogue and script, it's making us laugh out loud and at times pausing the episode, at least I do, to catch my breath from laughing. But it's fun watching how even in the middle of all that, you are getting some sort of character development, if not just really highlighting where their characters have come from, where they started off. Looking where someone like Tanjiro started off in the second, third episode, seeing where he is now, and even though he still gets scared because you have someone like Ino who can say, screw you, just follow me, I'm just going to charge in there, I'm going to kick some ass. Even though he's not trying to help Tanjiro, he naturally gives him the courage to go into a dark forest where there's clearly some ominous vibes coming off of it. It's really interesting seeing just how you have characters such as Zensu, who is just terrified. That's his main quirk. He's terrified, and he's trying to convince himself if maybe they said, hey, come along, we'll protect you, he would have went, but of course, that's not the main objective. Zensu isn't the priority here. It's going into this forest and basically saying, hey, we have to finish our mission and hopefully save the other demon slayers. It is funny though how his entire drive of entering the forest isn't because he got courage, it's because, holy shit, that bastard took Nezuko, my future wife, I gotta go kick his ass and take her back for myself. It's natural just how they blend the humor in the show, just surrounded by so much darkness and gloominess, and it just cracks me up and entertains me that without this constant shift in just shonen design comedy, it wouldn't be nearly as memorable. The story and characters are great, but like with Fullmetal Alchemist, that shift in comedy so often, it allows you to just have fun even when you're surrounded by so much darkness and despair. Though, with all the fun stuff we did have in this episode, it's not to say this episode didn't have its serious atmosphere, as once we enter this forest, the spider webs basically get revealed. And I love the idea of puppet masters. You can basically look at anime throughout the year and probably point to a few cases, especially in action-driven series, where an antagonist or just villain of the week basically has the ability to either alter memories and basically manipulate them just mentally, or there is a legitimate string pulling them and manipulating their bodies and causing them to do actions that they don't agree with. And I have always enjoyed that. It's one of my favorite design choices for minor or even main villains for a series, because the idea of manipulating someone, whether it be with actual webs and strings or just something mentally controlling them from the shadows, it's always interesting to see how it always feels rather different, even if at a surface level it feels pretty much the same, because you can shift up the villain's perspective and mentality, their drive, their goal, their overall objective to why they're doing this, or you can just have a mindless beast wanting to harm people. But it always feels like if you stylize it correctly or give the villain a personal motivation, it can come across as a different puppet master, even if at the surface level you're like, okay, they're controlling people, we've seen this done before. With something like Demon Slayer, of course all the demons eventually get some sort of personality upgrade before their death, so you do get that, but actually having spiderwebs control all these demon slayers, it's pretty terrifying. One of the best things they did in this episode, one of the most beautifully directed shots, is how when you're looking at this forest at a 2D layer, it looks creepy, you know, it's a dark lit wood, you know, you got, you know, these characters who are going to attack you from the shadows, it's creepy, but you're probably not shitting your pants. They, for like 3 seconds, put you in a POV perspective, where you literally see the forest from a 3D perspective, and it immediately becomes terrifying. Showing it from their perspective, why someone like Tanjiro would be afraid to go into that forest, showing us that, holy shit, this is what they're seeing around them. It's not as flat 2D surface where you have a couple of trees and yeah, it's a dimly lit scene, but why are they truly so terrified? Shifting it for 3 to 4 seconds, giving that POV perspective, it immediately gets you in their mentality and you're like, I understand why this is terrifying. There's another shot throughout this episode near the very end where we have, you know, basically doing one of his beast forms where it's like this sensor that they just stylize it, they color shift it, and just they allow us to once again go into a POV perspective, 3D everywhere, as we follow the sensor trying to locate the queen who is manipulating these soldiers in the shadows, and it looks gorgeous. Demon Slayer is one of the best looking anime from the past couple of seasons, especially for still shots. They just know how to make things look beautiful, and you can screen cap most of these shots and it will be a good piece of wallpaper for you, especially for making thumbnails. It is amazing for making thumbnails, I have to say. But I love how often we do get 3D perspective, because without that constant shift to 3D, you wouldn't be able to get the dynamic camera angles and just really make us feel like we're a part of this world. And when we are a part of this world, such as in this episode, we get as terrified as Tanjiro wanting to leave this forest, but knowing he has to clench his fist and keep moving forward. And that's the brilliance of the presentation that only a company such as Ufotable could probably deliver something as beautiful and elegant such as this. It's pretty interesting seeing just how you have a character such as Tanjiro who is very heroic, even though he does try to run away from being a hero at times, and you have someone like, you know, who is just a brute force wanting to kill him, being like, these guys are dumbasses, let's kill them because they're trying to kill us. But of course, because he's being guided by someone like Tanjiro, he's going to say, no, you can't do that, you have to just disable them, and how they naturally come to the conclusion of cutting the webs. But, you know, these are spiders, you can't just sit around stabbing the spiders like Ino would want to. You have to locate the head person in charge. And at first it just kind of felt like, okay, they have to locate the girl behind all this. Okay, you do that, you fight them, it's all said and done. But then you learn that she apparently has like 4 or 5 kids that are kind of backing her. This isn't going to be easy. Whether they're all a part of this force or not remains to be seen. We've only seen one of them, but this is going to be a pretty terrifying fight. It almost comes across as a horror because they're trapped in a forest. They have to not kill their comrades. They have to just disable them as they keep cutting these webs and the spiders keep attacking them. The spiders might attach themselves to their arms, meaning they might attack their own comrades. It's so easy for them to become the villain that they're trying to face off against, and how can someone like Ino deal with this mother who is controlling things from the shadow? She's so far away, and clearly the closer you get to her, the more her children will come and protect her, even if the soldiers aren't the ones kind of lurking behind you. And this is a really interesting battle that every single fight that we've come up against, whether it be hand-to-hand combat, whether it be swords, or just another demon of the week, not only are their abilities different, just the overall settings and locations, they play a huge factor to the battles, and just the way the delivery for the action is kind of presented to the viewer, it feels completely fresh and unique. With the last big battle we had against demons, we were trapped in a building that kept shifting perspective around, shifting our location, and it felt like almost a mirror house. You didn't know where you were. With this episode and this fight overall, we're now trapped in a forest that feels like a haunted mansion, something that feels like at any moment you don't know where your enemy is, and it feels like you are a rat in a cage where the spider is about to eat you. And that's the brilliance of Demon Slayer, is not only does the location play a huge factor to the battles and actually give it a sense of purpose and identity, the actual character they're facing off against has a different ability, different personality, and a different person than the last demon that we fought up against, and that shows the just strength to the writer and overall team that is adapting this beautiful source material. I love this episode. It was funny. Hell, this could have just been another funny episode, and I would have been chilling with that because I love the execution to the comedy, especially the more we grow this cast, the funnier it becomes, and the more I'm having just a grin on my face watching something like Demon Slayer. But when they have to shift it into the series and just show just the subtle development, whether it be with Zensu kind of getting the courage maybe in a romantic way, maybe not what we would originally expect with him, but hey, he went into that forest nonetheless, or you have someone like Ino who is slowly but surely understanding what human emotions are, and it's not a super fast pace, it's a steady but subtle pace, showing that someone like Tanjiro is having a good influence on him. You're seeing just great development, great writing, backed by incredible scenery and just really interesting action sequences overall. Demon Slayer is not failing in any way, shape, or form at this point in time. The worst content was in the early stages, and even in the early stages, it was still a pretty incredible show in its own right. This series is getting better and better, and the more characters we meet, the more settings and just sceneries we see, the more impressive and lasting in our mind this anime ultimately becomes. I thought this was an incredible episode, and this fight I could easily see becoming my favorite fight of Demon Slayer up to this point, just because I love the Puppet Master and just the location overall. It's absolutely gripping, and I can't wait to see more. But for anyone who watched this episode, what did you think of episode 15 of Demon Slayer? Love it, hate it, favorite moment? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you did enjoy, be sure to drop a like and also hit that subscribe button if you have been new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.